Hello, Lenore. Let's make it a lot more interactive, and let's start off with a couple of different questions. Courtney knows my style. Margaret, you know my style.
Yes.
What kind of burning questions does the group have that I could build around and share with you the presentation, if you will? What I will do after we finish is share all the electronic literature that goes hand in hand with it. But just as well, want to make sure that we have the questions answered versus just a standard presentation.
Yes, sounds good. So anyone, just go ahead and jump in at any time.
I know that this isn't related to businesses per se, but I saw that the amount that residents can apply for has increased for the first time in a while. And I just wonder if you can speak to that at some point in your presentation, and if there's any, additional requirements that go along with that.
Thank you, Courtney. As a matter of fact, that is one of the most important improvements to our organization that has happened as of the 31st of July. The dollar amounts for homeowners and renters. So folks that are on this call, my program, the low interest rate disaster loan program, is not only for businesses of all sizes, but it is also for homeowners and renters and most private nonprofits, including houses of worship. So in the past, the amounts were very much consistent with the amount of $200,000 and personal property of $40,000, right? Now those amounts have increased to $500,000 and $100,000 on the personal property. And what it does is basically address the issue of rising home prices around the nation, and also the contents that people have in the form of personal property, which may not have been addressed with the meager amounts of $40,000 that we had in the past. So the program is for the uninsured and the underinsured. So every one of you folks that are homeowners and have a homeowner's insurance policy, just know for a fact that you're underinsured. Why? Because for every dollar worth of insurance claims that you put through, what you're going to get back is literally a fraction of that $1. You may get 70 cents, 80 cents, and there is a category that's called deductible, depreciation, things along those lines that the SBA will cover. So if you put a claim in for $50,000 and the insurance company only pays you 40, and that's the end of it, potentially we can cover that extra $10,000 that you never got. Shouldn't say extra 10, should be the portion that you didn't get paid on, the $10,000 gap. We will cover that. So by definition, homeowners are underinsured. And we found this out the hard way in Hurricane Ida. We had the pleasure of serving the city of New Orleans and 26 parishes across the state. And deductibles ranged anywhere from 1% to 10%. A lot of the folks thought the insurance companies would make them whole. They didn't. Unfortunately, I've got lots and lots of people around the 26 parish area that are still seeking assistance, but as a result of them not filing the actual application, they're not able to seek assistance. So, Courtney, good question. Goes up to $500,000 as of the 31st. It's not retroactive. It's everything going forward. Anybody else that wants to start off asking a question that I could build upon? We're only a group of 10, so I want to take the opportunity to make it a more of a interactive session. Have you folks ask me questions about what you're expecting out of this session so that we can customize it. And if there are no questions, I'll continue with my presentation. While you folks contemplate that question, let me see if I can't share my screen with my presentation. Bear with me. Margaret, for a second, I'm going to go black, okay?
All right.
Any questions so far, folks?
Don't be shy.
All right. So let me build on what Courtney just said. Some of the changes that we've talked about, as you see, can you folks see me with the share?
Yes,
Okay, is it large enough for you folks to see?
yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So basically, we talked about the increase from 40,000 to 100,000 for repair replacement. My interest rates as of today, fixed over a maximum 30-year term for homeowners and renters, is a fixed 2.5% interest rate. That applies to personal property and also repairing damages to your primary home. Your secondary home, if it's used for the purpose of rental property, that falls within the purview of a commercial business. So if Margaret has, Margaret McGee LLC, and she rents out her duplex or home, and is evidence in the form of a Schedule E, Elizabeth, she can very easily request not only damages to her physical property, but also the vacating of the lease because the property cannot be occupied anymore. The next thing that you see is making permanent the deferment period for all disaster loans for 1 year. Back in the day, it was 5 months. Now it's 1 year. So in other words, once you're approved for a loan, there are no payments for 1 year. Interest will accrue, but there are no payments. On a case-by-case basis, in my presentation, I'll cover this right now and then get back to it. We are able to refinance your first mortgage as long as, and I'll keep Margaret as my example. Let's say her home was substantially damaged. She borrowed money from us, and she has used up all her money. Hypothetically, Margaret could request that we look at possibly paying off her first mortgage loan with proceeds from the second and combining it into one note. That amount is now $500,000. Before it was $200,000. So that new interest rate now, guess what? 2.5%. So refinance is a huge component of our overall program. If you look at the last bullet point, we're able to increase dollars and cents for mitigation up to 500,000. And here's what happens. 20% of the loan amount, Margaret applies with us, goes out to the Disaster Loan Outreach Center and says to Sheila or somebody taking her application and says, I want a loan. And we ask her questions about the property, the damages to the property, things along those lines. And once we fill out her application, we send out an appraiser to her property. And once the appraiser takes stock of her damaged home, personal property, she can then request an additional 20% over and above the damaged amount as mitigation to build back better. There is considerable evidence that if you were to use current building material, most homes are built in the 70s and 80s, some are even older, they have found that the materials of late tend to reduce the amount of damages that it bears, thereby reducing the cost of recovery. So mitigation amount continues to be 20% of the verified loss that the appraiser confirms once they come out. And you ask, what is the loan amount? Well, the loan amount is your verified physical loss. I see a question in the chat or a comment in the chat. Let me take a look.
And Shashil, I also have a question. There's a question here. It says, which SBA loans are now eligible for no interest and no payments for 1 year? I know you
All disaster loans. All disaster loans.
Okay, so no interest for 12 months.
Correct.
Okay.
I did say interest accrues, correct? Forgive me. No interest, no payment, and deferment period is for 1 year. That's correct.
But the interest accrue during that time. So when you start paying your loan, you're going to actually be paying the interest initially?
Let me confirm that, because this particular slide is throwing me off. Make permanent the 1 year, no interest. Let me make sure that by the time we're done, I get you that information. Before, in the previous example, interest did accrue, okay?
Right.
Now it's 0%, okay?
Right.
0% in the initial deferment period. So I want to make sure that after the first 12 months are done,
Mhm.
that the interest rate goes to that 2.5%. Let me work out that little piece and I'll confirm it with you, Margaret. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
What other questions do we have while I switch screens? Okay, bear with me while I go dark, and I'll be back with the rest of the presentation. Courtney, any pearls of wisdom you want to share, my dear?
Just that I'm grateful everybody, is here and listening. Obviously we never hope for a disaster, and our folks are unfortunately, used to experiencing them, and we just want to, know what to do to prepare and to be thinking about. And we're grateful for the resources that the SBA has.
Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate it. So can you folks see my new presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. There we go. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. The name of our disaster program now has changed to Recovery and Resilience. One reason and one reason only for it. We're not just a low interest rate disaster program. We're all about being involved and engaged in the community. As you folks know, the National Disaster Recovery Framework talks about community engagement. We're as strong as our weakest link. If our cities are not prepared, our consumers are not prepared, and our businesses are not prepared, guess what? We're not as strong as we think we are. So what we're trying to do is make sure that our programs, our outreach, our interactions are consistent with recovery and being resilient. So if somebody were to ask me, hey, Sushil, you only got 10 seconds to tell me what it is that you do, and my answer to Margaret's going to be, we are the largest source of funds for privately damaged properties post-disaster. And the program is to help private property owners pay for disaster losses. Last but not least, the program is for the underinsured and uninsured, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, the monies are deposited directly from the U.S. Treasury. The time frame is anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks. And unlike the other programs that you heard of when you hear about the SBA, 80% of my loans are to homeowners and renters. Yes, my name says Small Business Administration, but our job is to support the gamut of society, homeowners, renters, businesses of all sizes, and most private nonprofits. There's several disaster declarations that you may have heard of. One New Orleans is very familiar with is the one that we do with FEMA. That's where you register with FEMA. They refer you over to the SBA. And believe it or not, folks, about 2/3 of all folks that register with FEMA are asked to come to the SBA exactly for the reason that I mentioned up earlier. We are the largest source of funds for private property post-disaster. FEMA is very much a grants-based program. They are the G program, capital G, grants. And grants were never intended to make you whole, ever, or the community whole. So they will refer you to the SBA. And yes, you can have grants and a loan. And typically, grants and loans make a community whole post-disaster. Okay? So when you register with FEMA and they send you over to the SBA, the expectation is that you qualify for a loan, or at least try to get a loan. And if we're turned down, we'll refer you back to FEMA's other needs assistance. Okay? And if you do qualify, the interest rate, again, as I mentioned, it changes every quarter for us. But for the borrower, it's a fixed 30-year note. The other type of residential declaration that you hear about is public assistance. That's damages to infrastructure, to bridges, to architecture, so on and so forth. And FEMA comes into town, helps with the rebuilding of the infrastructure of the city. And there's a new law that says if a city of New Orleans, hypothetically, we do not wish it upon anybody, hypothetically, if there is a public assistance for Colin Arnold and his group out of New Orleans, and it is a FEMA declaration A through G, all he has to do is find one structure with 40% or more damages to qualify for our new Rural Communities Act. And I'll share that with you momentarily. At the very bottom is our bread and butter. Why am I in Shreveport? Exactly for that reason. 25 homes or businesses with 40% or more uninsured damages. That's right. That's basically why they get a declaration. The governor, of course, has to request it. They requested. Here we are. Rural Communities Act. That's what I mentioned up front. That is now part of our quiver, and we're able to declare a disaster in a rural area. Now, you ask me, is New Orleans a rural area? And the answer is yes. There are only 25 areas around the country that are considered urban. So before I ask somebody what's the definition of a rural, let me give you the answer. It's not urban. And what's the definition of urban? It's not rural. It's that simple, folks. It's the Government Accounting Office's definition of rural and urban. And if something does happen to New Orleans, God forbid, and the thresholds hold, RCA could apply to the city of New Orleans and Orleans Parish. The loans are for property damages and low interest rate direct loans that are not covered by insurance, shortage of other recovery funds. We're able to come in and assist with that overall mindset. This is my program in one single page. I've increased on my sheet. Courtney, if you recall, I provided this to you when we first met. If you could throw that one piece of page on your PowerPoint presentation and include this, here you are, 500 and 100, and 20% of the verified damage loss that we just talked about. I'm going to keep that there for a fraction of a second for folks to take a look at it. And while I look at the chat box, I think there's a question in there. Ruda asks, how long do loan application processes take on average from application to funding? Typically 3 to 4 weeks, my friend, and the money's in your bank account fairly quickly. Are there repositories that homes and business owners can deliver, store their most important information to relieve the stress of having to preserve fragile documents amid disasters? As a matter of fact, that's a very good question, and I'm going to be covering that momentarily as soon as I'm done with the program, the description itself. So thank you in anticipation of that question. Any question on this page? Hearing none. Benefits of the program: mitigation. You can build back better, provide additional funds. We talked about the 20% an additional funds you can get to rebuild back better. Benefits of the loan: long-term repayment. It's based on cash flow. Refinance on a case-by-case basis, and relocate using SBA loan proceeds. So if you guys want to go from Canal Street over to Poitras, because Canal tends to flood and Poitras doesn't, hypothetically, you can always use those funds to go from one part of the city to another. We require insurance, and the reason for the insurance is very specifically for those folks that are uninsured. We're moving them from the ranks of uninsured to underinsured, because in the future, not if, but when there is a disaster, all you would then do is contact your insurance company and ask for them to repair your home or your personal property, and you don't have to apply with the SBA anymore unless you're applying for deductibles. Our role is to reduce federal disaster costs, as I just mentioned, to go from the roles of uninsured to being underinsured. Your first line of defense, folks, is always insurance. All of you folks that have been in New Orleans, did you know that 1 inch of water can cause as much as $25,000 worth of damage to your home? I know during Ida, a lot of folks said, only 1 inch of water, don't worry about it. $25,000 later. So my humble suggestion, if your home is remotely damaged, please make sure that you get the necessary dollars and cents to repair and recover. You folks might already know on the business side, Margaret and Courtney, you've got Carmen Sunda that runs the Americans SBDC there in Xavier. The SCORE chapters out of the New Orleans District Office, Marjorie and Joanne. The Veterans Business Outreach Center out of Mississippi. And of course, Classy Duncan and Judy from the Urban League Women's Business Center. They offer all types of assistance, including the ones that I've listed. So feel free to give them a call and ask them how they can assist with regular technical assistance, in addition to recovery decisions and post-disaster. So here's where the question that Ruta was asking about. My humble example. Let me go back. So data backup, I was looking for that particular language all the way at the bottom. Data backup, whether it's Google, Dropbox, OneDrive, is where we would suggest that a homeowner or renter preserve your valuable documents. I, for one, have multiple sources of repositories to save that information, and I keep it just in case. Because most times after a disaster, guess what people say? Hey, my CPA has got it. Well, guess what? Your CPA or the enrolled agent might themselves be in harm's way. So make sure that you put it away. I was also reminded when I was down in New Orleans, that a lot of folks do not believe in the world of the cloud. In that case, keep yourself next to you a Ziploc bag that is waterproof. Make sure that it's large enough that you remember to carry with you when you leave the home, and keep that with you. Keep a copy also of your insurance coverages, your deck page, your exclusion. And while we're talking about preparedness, if you're a business owner, please make sure that you assess your risk. The risk in Gentilly is different than the risk on Canal versus in Metairie versus Chalmette versus Laplace and or Slidell. Depending on those particular areas, make sure that you develop a plan specific to your employees and your business in that area. Can you get your business back in operation? And break down the business components to operations, IT, human resources, inventory, so on and so forth. Because if you don't have a business plan for each one of those, guess what? You'll find yourself staying closed. And let me tell you, it breaks my heart to see businesses still up and down Magazine, Tchoupitoulas, Poydras, Carondelet that have never come back after Ida. Because statistics show that a business that's not resilient or prepared, 1 in 4 businesses that stay closed for those first 5 days of a disaster have a 90% failure rate at the end of the first year. That's a big number. So the folks in Florida certainly hope that they have a preparedness plan in place. On the consumer side, make sure that you have batteries, make sure that you have water, non-perishable food, cash, evacuation route, places to go. Because we all know in New Orleans and in Louisiana, the Northeast quadrant is the worst. That's where the significant amount of flooding happens. Where are you going to go? When the water's rising, are you going to stay on your second floor if it's 10 feet? I don't know. Perhaps you get out of harm's way. If you're in the Florida Panhandle, nothing's going to happen there, but we never know. Be safe. Listen to your local parish or county emergency manager as to what to do, and so on and so forth. Regularly have your facility and your contents, personal and professional. Take pictures and videotape it. Make sure that you are enrolled in the NFIP program. 30 days is your cooling off period. So folks that have signed up for the NFIP program in Florida, they are not going to have any coverage for this particular event if it's less than 30 days. Have a communication plan. Make sure you have phone numbers of people. If you're working for a company, make sure you know what your role is. Make sure that you have a contact list. And that contact list is for people that can contact your suppliers, your fellow employees, your insurance company, and your supply chain. Now, if I was an employee of, let's say I work for Margaret, Margaret needs to know what my evacuation plan is and where I'm headed, because if I don't come back on the day that the city is open and she's opening back for business, she's down 1 employee. And if she generates hypothetically $100,000 and it's 10 people that work for, ideally I've contributed $10,000 worth of revenue. right? Hypothetically, maybe I'm not a revenue generator, but I'm on the cost side of the equation, but hypothetically. So those types of equations and decision making has to go into your communication plan, because if people don't know that you are in business, they're going to assume that you're out of business, which is why you need a communication plan. You need to head off any rumors. Use social media, use X or Threads or Facebook or Instagram or or Snapchat or something. Let people know that you're safe. Okay. And there are a couple of websites, disasterassistance.gov, along with sba.gov/prepare, for you to download programs that are, or I should say, in this case, PDFs for cybersecurity and a few other lists that I haven't had the opportunity to share with you yet, but I'll send that out to Margaret momentarily so that she can share with all the folks on the call. That's pretty much the gist of my presentation. It took about half an hour to finish up. I think, Margaret, we're right on time, aren't we? Yep, that's correct, Mr. Bruda. 5 days, literally 90% don't return. FEMA has a statistic that says at the end of the first year, after a disaster, 43% of the community does not have, 43% of the businesses don't ever come back. And did you know two of the statistics? I'm not trying to scare anybody here. This is what we live with.
Michelle?
Hmm.
Lost him for a minute.
Lost him.
It may be something with his speaker, because I see he's still connected. Well, while we are waiting for him, do anyone have any questions? Of course, we could put them in the chat box, or you could just ask your question now.
Chat.
Yeah, I think we lost him altogether. He may be trying to reconnect. So, I will go ahead and say this is the first of 3 sessions. Today we had the emergency preparedness with SBA. Tomorrow we're going to have the insurance, Louisiana Department of Insurance. The commission is going to actually come and speak to us about programs that they have. There's the fortified roof program, and there's also, let me see what the other name is. I know the insurance topic is a very hot topic for us now, being that the insurance has gone up tremendously. The other program is the Insured Louisiana Initiative Program. So we'll have that tomorrow, and Thursday we're going to have someone from NOLA Ready going to provide us with the different resources that's available during the disaster. And hold on 1 second, it's actually him calling so I can see what's going on.
Margaret, Shasheen got rerouted to another link. I supplied him with this Zoom link, so he should be joining shortly.
Yeah, I was actually on the phone with him when you came in. So he said he's joining now. Thank you so much, Ruda.
Hi, guys, I'm back. I lost internet for a period of time, and I'm here. Thanks,
Thank
Margaret.
you so
Thanks,
much.
Rita.
Glad to have you back again.
Thank you.
Okay,
So-
so we had some questions in the chat box for you.
Let me look. I don't see anything, Margaret. Do you want to read it off to me?
Oh, okay. Miss Audrey was asking for a copy of the presentation.
Allowed to send it?
Miss Eleanor says she enjoyed the presentation. I appreciate sharing this valuable information.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Okay. Yeah, everybody's basically just kind of praising you for your presentation, which was awesome.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, team. Couldn't have done without you guys. Team makes the dream work.
Yes, yes. So no more questions, no one? And Shashil, you will share the presentation so I can send it out to them once the session has ended.
Yes, ma'am. I will send you the PDF. I'll send you my electronic files for the Rural Communities Act. I'll send out the PDFs for checklists. I'll send out a few different things that I would love for you. Didn't we talk about it being posted on the city's website too, Courtney? And you, Margaret?
Yeah, Courtney, we would probably have to find out exactly where we could insert it. And our IT team can probably definitely get it on there.
Right. And before we, duplicate, I think Colin said the same thing, that he would do that, because I spent a lot of time with them. So if you don't mind putting it on there for us before, as we said, during Blue Skies, we want it up there so that in Gray Skies, they can find it easily. And now that you folks have a little bit more awareness of the differences between FEMA and SBA, we could, thank you, Beverly, we could start the process of making it more resilient and making it more informative and also more practical and useful.
Yeah, and I think definitely NOLA Ready would probably be a great place to make sure that, this information is there.
Certainly would love to have you assist me with that. There's a question about, are there lists of recommended contractors or additional resources to expedite processing? We do not. You're talking about the loan processing, right, Ruda? Yeah, so basically it's a SBA reserve team that, gets into high gear fairly quickly, and we ramp up processing, and we make sure that folks are, we have centers that we open up. So no, we don't have third party. We have SBA employees or SBA contractors that join the SBA to help out with a tremendous surge, if you will.
Okay, I have one question before you leave.
Yes, ma'am.
You were speaking earlier. I wanted to see if you got the answer to the question about that deferred payment for a year with no incurred interest.
I will respond momentarily. I haven't had a chance because I dropped off. I didn't get a chance to look. So perhaps what I'll do, not perhaps, I will send you the final brochure that addresses that. And you'll have it along with the rest of the stuff.
Thank you.
But of course.
I appreciate
And
it.
Shashil, just to give you an idea, I have that from I think a talking point sheet, a Q&A sheet from SBA.
That's correct. That's become permanent.
It actually it said declared on or after September 21st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. So I don't know if that has.
That became permanent. That became permanent. So the language, to read through that part where it talks about the interest payment portion, that specifically will elicit Does it say 0% during the first and then interest accrues? Or does it say interest continues accruing? Either way, don't do my legwork. I'll do it for you and I'll send it to you. That program that you have that I sent became
Mhm.
permanent. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, all right. So as soon as you send it to me, I'll make sure everyone gets it.
Of course. Appreciate all of you guys spending 40 minutes of your valuable time with me during the course of the day.
Always a pleasure having you participate with us.
Margaret, what a pleasure. Please say hello to Jeff and also to Courtney. I know she dropped off.
No, I'm here.
Oh, Courtney, you're there, my dear, always.
Thank you, Sushil, for the information as always.
I appreciate you guys. Be safe. I know tomorrow is Ida, Katrina, and everybody else's anniversary. Let's not meet by disaster, folks. Be safe, be prepared, be resilient. Thanks for all that you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And to everyone, like I said, we have our second session tomorrow. This session will be the Louisiana Department of Insurance. Remember to check your emails for reminders. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel within 5 to 10 business days. So you could always go back and revisit if needed. Thanks so much, Sushil, and all the guests for joining. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a
Bye,
good
guys.
one.
Have a great
Thank you.
evening.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.